Number 10, Death Game. In November 2017, a Russian student murdered his teacher, took a selfie, and then killed himself. Blue Whale, a name you've probably heard of at this point, was a twisted online death game involving the completion of 50 tasks before a victim took their life. And it's claimed that hundreds of Russian teenagers died after falling into this trap. 18-year-old Andrei Emeliakanov was also one of them. Apparently, months before the incident, he started posting on internet forums about how he didn't like his 44-year-old teacher, Sergei Danilov, and wanted to kill him. What's more, he even posted things under an alias 11117. Of course, this was considered normal on forums, so no one paid any attention to them. But on the 1st of November 2017, the same date as his alias, Andrei decided to carry out his sinister plan. He grabbed a massive circular saw and rushed straight up to the classroom during a break, where Danilov was sitting, and before the father of three could even speak, the 18-year-old stabbed him in the neck with a knife. He didn't stop there, though. He also mowed him down with an electric saw. If that wasn't gruesome enough, Andrei took a selfie, smiling proudly in front of the bloody corpse, and uploaded the photos to the internet. By this point, people had been alerted that something horrible had happened. When law enforcement arrived, it was already too late. The student had taken his own life, so all they found were 2 dead bodies and a small pool of blood. Number 9, caught red-handed. Most college students these days have side hustles to cover the cost of their education. But in March 2017, a trio from Florida flew too close to the sun by turning to prostitution. 23-year-old Acacia Jericho Friedman and 21-year-old Mari Noun were students at the University of Miami, while 19-year-old Samara Charlton studied at Florida International University. Charlton was minoring in criminal justice, making her case even more ironic. But while learning about the law, she decided to go against it with her older friends as they created a plan to make some quick money as prostitutes. 2 of the girls apparently cut a deal with some guy for about $5,000 each, with Noun acting as their pimp. Their actual rates were supposed to be much higher, but since they were desperate for cash, they accepted a lowball offer. Everything was going pretty smoothly as the 2 girls prepared to give this customer the time of his life. Little did they know, though, that the man they'd made a deal with was actually an undercover cop. As soon as they entered the Hotel Colonnade room, the cop signaled his colleagues to arrest the 3 students. The trio was then taken into custody right away. They were charged with multiple counts of prostitution and jailed at first, but they didn't actually serve a sentence. They were released on bond with just a slap on the wrist. Number 8, grieving father. In December 2016, a building superintendent in Manhattan smelled a foul odor in one of her apartments. When he went inside to check, he found the corpse of a woman and her young child. 36-year-old Felicia Barahona used to teach at DeWitt Clinton High School and even had served in Afghanistan. But in 2013, she became the center of attention for some very wrong reasons. She'd been having an affair with a 15-year-old student, Isaac Duran Infante, but she waited until he was actually 17 to have sexual relations. None of that mattered, though, as she was fired from her job. Here's the interesting part. She told her teen lover, quote, not to worry about using protection, which obviously resulted in a pregnancy. Before her son Miguel was born, Infante broke up with her and moved to Pennsylvania. Fast forward 4 years to 2016, and she'd be living in Manhattan with her now 4-year-old son, getting a weekly $100 payment as child support from her former student. Sadly for her, though, there was no such thing as a happy ending. She was found dead in her apartment in December 2016 with an electrical cord around her neck, while her son had been drowned in a tub. When Infante was contacted by investigators, he acted as if he was devastated and said he hadn't visited the home since their affair in 2011. His grieving father act turned out to be fake. Police spotted him entering the building on surveillance footage only to leave hours later wearing different clothes. He even confessed to killing his former teacher after being caught red-handed. He said that he was angry about her dressing Miguel up as a girl, though he described himself as the devil during the confession. The 24-year-old was charged with 2 counts, first and second-degree murder, and sentenced to life in prison back in 2017. Number 7, HACKERMAN. We all wanted to hack into the school's computers and actually change our grades at some point, but in 2016, this Atlanta student decided to actually do it. Chase Arthur Hughes, a Kennesaw State University student, thought that switching his grade from a B to an A would be worth the risk of hacking into the college computers. He hopped onto his girlfriend's internet to avoid getting tracked, cracked his knuckles, and entered into the matrix. He changed his grade first from a B to an A. Then he went ahead and did his friends favors by changing their Fs to As too. Switching the grades is one thing, but Hughes took things a step too far by conducting data theft. He used the login credentials of professors and managed to access some really sensitive information, including credit and medical data of students and teachers. He also took the usernames and passwords of 35 faculty members. He probably would have gotten away with it too, but sadly for him though, the university caught on to his actions thanks to the fact that they used AlExpress, a software that sends an email to a professor if any changes in the grades are made. It didn't take long for them to track him down, and Hughes was then charged with computer trespassing, forgery, and computer invasion of privacy. If you didn't think you would get caught, would you change your grade? Tell us in the comments below and hit subscribe while you're at it. Number 6. The Beast. In August 2011, a professor-student romance ended in a tragic murder-suicide. 31-year-old Ernesto Bustamante used to teach as a University of Idaho professor and had been in a relationship with his 22-year-old student Katie Benoit. The two had been dating for a year or so before things started falling apart, so much so that Katie had to report him to the university. As a result, Ernesto had to hand in his resignation and leave both his relationship and the job. At this point, Katie thought she was in the clear and had gotten rid of her abusive professor/lover, but she didn't know what she was truly dealing with. Ernesto was an assistant professor in the Department of Psychology and also had a multiple personality disorder. Some days he'd call himself a psychopathic killer, while on others he'd just be the Beast. This was usually harmless for the most part, until it wasn't. Katie was baking cookies with her roommates on a Monday afternoon when she stepped outside for a cigarette. 2 minutes later, the roommates heard gunshots. Katie had been shot and killed with a handgun, and according to her neighbor, it was a man in a trench coat who murdered her. Of course, the professor was the first suspect. When police traced him to his hotel room a day later, all they found was his dead body. He'd shot himself in the head. Number 5. Shark attack. In June 2019, a Torrance College student was snorkeling with her family on a trip in the Bahamas. Little did she know, though, that this would be the last vacation she'd ever go on. 21-year-old Jordan Lindsay was majoring in communication studies at Loyola Marymount University and had just gone on summer break. Naturally, she decided to spend extra time with her parents in the Bahamas, who could turn down a tropical vacation. Sadly for her, this seemingly harmless trip was also the cause of her demise. It was a normal Wednesday afternoon at a resort near Rose Island, so she went to explore the depths of the ocean and snorkel, but she wasn't the only one at sea. Apparently, 3 sharks were nearby, and she didn't see them coming either. Her parents, watching from nearby, did see the predators approaching and yelled to warn her, but by that point, it was already too late. Emergency services were instantly called and she was rushed to a hospital in New Providence where she died. The sharks, they just disappeared, never to be seen again, capping off one of the most strange shark attacks ever. Number 4. Hold My Beer. In September 2019, an Ohio student got way too drunk at a party and decided it would be a good idea to climb 30 feet up an electricity pole to entertain guests. Tyler Uhar, who was a student in Athens, Ohio, was always a bit of a daredevil. Of course, there's a fine line between being a thrill seeker and outright stupid, a line that he seemed to cross pretty often. Tyler was at a house party near Ohio University and let alcohol take over his body. He then told everyone that he was going to climb up on top of a massive electricity pylon and be the center of attention. Obviously, no one stopped him. In fact, if anything, the crowd cheered him on as he climbed the pole. But again, he flew too close to the sun. Once he reached the top, he accidentally touched a live wire and boom! Massive electricity surge, some sparks, and a big explosion. It sent him flying down to the ground and he landed on pure concrete. At this point, most people feared he'd been killed, but somehow he not only survived the shock, but also the fall. He did spend a few critical days in the hospital, though, and apparently he broke multiple bones in his body, had burns all over, putting him out of commission for many weeks. Number 3. Stillbirth. In March 2016, an Indiana student gave birth to a child who died in the process. But upon investigation, police realized that there was something more sinister at play. 21-year-old Michaela Munn was a student at Manchester University and was expecting a child very soon, so much so that when it was time for delivery, she couldn't even make it to the hospital. She called 911, but by the time the emergency crews got to her dorm, they found her in the bathtub with an infant child she just delivered. So both of them were taken to a hospital where the baby was pronounced dead. Munn, on the other hand, was released after treatment. Here's the interesting part. Apparently, shortly after the death of her child, Munn dropped out of school. At the same time, though, there were too many inconsistencies in her story for the police to ignore, so they opened a formal investigation. And guess what? They found evidence that Michaela had actually killed her own son after his birth. As a result, she was arrested and charged with murder and neglect of a dependent. Number 2. No art for me. In December 2021, a Montreal high school student got so angry with his art teacher that he stabbed him. The 17-year-old who studied at John F. Kennedy High School in Montreal's St. Michel neighborhood had a mental disorder that led him to viewing a deformed version of reality, and somehow in his head, this gave birth to the notion that his 42-year-old art teacher, Maxime Canuel, was the worst, so much so that he wanted to kill him. At around 10 a.m. on a normal December morning, the teenager walked into a class with a knife, stabbed the art teacher, and ran away. Canuel had life-threatening stab wounds to his chest and shoulder and had to be rushed to the hospital. Thankfully, he managed to pull through and recover, but paramedics said he was lucky to be alive. Of course, it didn't take long for the police to arrest the student. After a year of trials, the 17-year-old was sentenced to 2 years in custody at a youth center and 1 year of surveillance for attempted murder. The incident was so harrowing for Kenwell that he considered ending his 16-year-long teaching career. Also, he refused to forgive the student, saying it's pretty hard when the boy literally tried to kill him. Number 1 football game. We've seen people hurl insults at each other after feisty football games, but this Utah student took things a bit too far when she decided to make terrorist threats towards her own team. Apparently, the threats were posted by the 21-year-old University of Utah student on Yik Yak, a social media platform that lets you post stuff anonymously on college campus. The student wrote that she was going to, quote, detonate the nuclear reactor that was located in the University of Utah, causing mass destruction. The funny part, this threat was aimed at the football team, urging them to win their weekend game against San Diego State University. Also, in case you're wondering, yes, the college does have a nuclear reactor used for its engineering program. In fact, the student who posted this was also studying engineering and knew the ins and outs of the reactor, turning this threat into a legit situation. That being said, the reactor was secured and the student was quickly arrested. Even though she said it was a joke, she was charged with making terrorist threats. But hey, her method did work because the team beat San Diego 35-7. Thanks for watching. What's the weirdest interaction you've had with a college student? Tell us in the comments below and don't forget to subscribe. See you next time on The Bad Badger.